Do everything you can. One slip, and you know exactly what's coming to you. The voice of authority on the other line was filled with warning. Yes, sir, Annie responded, her voice shaking slightly as she held the phone. She was one of the top employees at Mateo Henderson's company. Since the tragic loss of his wife and child, Mateo had changed. He had become cold, ruthless, and relentless, earning the nickname Monster Boss from his employees. Still, they endured him. Why? Because he paid well. And more than that, Mateo was one of the most recognized entrepreneurs in America. His company had been featured multiple times on television for its unprecedented rise ever since he took the reins. What's going on? Mateo snapped, sensing the car slowing down. Traffic, sir, his driver replied quickly. Mateo clenched his fist and turned to look outside. Of all the things he hated, being late was at the top of his list. He had just landed from London after spending a month there for the opening of their newest branch. Now that he was back in the US, he was focused on domestic operations again. His gaze wandered through the car window, frustration boiling inside him at the sluggish flow of traffic. But suddenly, his eyes locked on a pawn shop, more specifically, on something displayed in its front window. Stop the car! Pull over now! Quickly! He ordered. His driver swerved to the side and came to a stop. Mateo wasted no time getting out of the vehicle. He approached the display window, his eyes glued to the ring inside. Good morning, sir. How may I help you? Asked the pawn shop attendant with a bright smile. But Mateo didn't answer. His attention was solely on the ring. Oh, are you interested in that ring? The woman followed up. It came in today. No one has reserved it yet, so it's still available. I want it, Mateo said without thinking, his voice low but firm. The woman smiled wider. Would you like to get it now? Or I can reserve it if you'd like to place a down payment. Number, I'm taking it now, he replied, stepping closer. Of course, but can I ask, why? You look like that ring means something to you? Mateo's face tightened. I want to know who pawned that ring. The woman hesitated. The reaction on her face told him everything. She knew the person. Do you know who it was? He pressed. There must be a receipt. Let me see it. It was a child who pawned it, sir, she said quietly. Honestly, our policy doesn't allow that, but I know the family. They're from the same neighborhood. I accepted it out of pity. Mateo's fingers started to tremble. A child, he whispered. What's the name of the child? He's 10 years old. His mother is sick and bedridden. The kid scavenges for recyclables to support her. He brought the ring to help pay for medicine. Her words struck him like a bolt of lightning. That ring, it wasn't just any ring. It was an heirloom, a unique piece that had been passed down for generations in his family. His ancestors had it specially made, and it was given to him when he proposed to the woman he once loved deeply, the same woman who had vanished without a trace years ago. He clenched his jaw. How much did you give for it? I gave 30,000, the woman said. It's high quality and has 5 rare diamonds. I assumed the money will go to her treatment. Mateo could hardly breathe as he took the ring and examined it. So many questions swirled in his mind. How did the ring end up with a child? The only person he had ever given that ring to was her, the woman he had once promised forever to, the woman whose absence had shattered his heart and turned him into someone he barely recognized, the same woman who disappeared all those years ago. Can I have their address? He asked, his voice almost a plea. At that moment, he didn't care about the meeting he was supposed to attend, or the ring in his hand. He just needed to see the person who had pawned it. I can give it to you, the woman replied. She scribbled the address and handed it over. Mateo returned to his car, his grip firm on the piece of paper and the heirloom ring. As he sat back down, his driver turned to him. "Sir, your secretary's been calling non-stop. The board of directors is waiting. The meeting's about to start." "Cancel it," Matteo said without hesitation. "Shut down the entire state office if you have to. I have something far more important to take care of." He unfolded the paper and stared at the address again. "We're going there. Now." The driver couldn't speak. He was startled by Matteo's sudden change. Everyone in the company knew him to be punctual, strict, a perfectionist through and through. Canceling the most important board meeting was unheard of. This was the first time he'd done something like this. "Well, what are you waiting for?" Matteo snapped, breaking the driver's trance. "Ah, yes, sir. We're leaving now," the driver said, and immediately started the car. How could a child end up with that ring? And what if the woman he thought he'd lost forever was still alive? His mind spun with questions as the car sped down the highway. Flashback. "She cheated on me, and you expect me to marry her? Are you serious?" Matteo's voice rang out as he argued with his father. "I'm sure Claudia still loves you. She won't do it again," his father replied, equally furious. Matteo couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Is it because her father is your friend? Because marrying her would benefit the company? Is that what this is about?" His father's jaw clenched at his words, a clear sign he had struck a nerve. "I'm right, aren't I? This is all about business, money. You don't care if I get hurt as long as you get what you want." Matteo didn't realize he was yelling now. With one swift motion, his father crossed the room and landed a hard punch on Matteo's face. "That's enough. Please don't fight," his mother cried, stepping between them. "Don't you dare accuse me," his father barked. "Everything I do is for your benefit. I'm teaching you to think logically, not emotionally. Emotions won't get you anywhere in the world we live in. You are the future of this company. You need to learn the rules now." Matteo wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and gave his father a bitter smile. "Yeah, I should ignore my mental health for the sake of your precious company. Just like you did. You never even loved Mom. You married her for her money. You used her to climb to the top." His mother turned pale at his words. She loved his father so much that she had chosen to stay blind. "Are you even aware you've become a low-key gold digger?" Matteo spat with a sarcastic grin, turning back to his father. "What did you just say?" His father shouted and was about to lunge at him again, but his mother stepped in to stop him. "Just go, Matteo. Please, go," she begged, pushing him out of the house before things escalated further. "Get back here, you ungrateful brat! How dare you walk away from me?" his father yelled as Matteo walked out the door. Matteo went straight to a bar. He got drunk and didn't go home that night. He had wanted to become a doctor, but his father forced him into business. He had obeyed every wish his parents had, trying so hard to be the son they wanted. But now, his father had become so toxic that Matteo could no longer sacrifice his well-being. A year ago, he loved Claudia, but she suddenly cheated on him, claiming she no longer felt a spark in their relationship. He hadn't been able to move on since, and now his father was telling him to go back to her, as if the months of heartbreak meant nothing. He took the last swig of whiskey from his glass and stood up from the bar stool. "Dude, you look hammered. You sure you can still drive?" asked his friend, the bar owner. "Yeah, man, thanks. I can handle myself," Matteo replied with a crooked smile. He didn't care what happened to him anymore. If he died, so be it. Life had become meaningless. His father didn't value his sacrifices or his feelings. Maybe disappearing would be better for everyone. He floored the gas pedal of his Bugatti as he raced down the highway. He overtook cars, veered into the opposite lane, and instead of slowing down, he stepped harder on the accelerator. "This is your day, Matteo," he muttered through clenched teeth, eyes wild. He had no destination. He just kept driving, until suddenly a huge truck clipped his bumper. His car was thrown off the road and over a cliff. It tumbled violently before finally crashing to a stop at the bottom. Matteo lost consciousness. When he opened his eyes, he was in an unfamiliar place. The walls were made of bamboo, the roof old and patched. A vintage cabinet sat by the wall, and the wide open window beside his head let in the warm breeze. The room reflected the lives of those who lived there. Humble, modest people. "He's awake, Grandma," said a gentle female voice. He turned and saw a young woman coming down from the upper level of the small home. A few moments later, an older woman joined her. Both were smiling as they saw him awake on the bamboo bed. "Thank goodness. Here, have some water," said the older woman, handing him a glass. "Where am I? Who are you?" he asked, still dazed. The younger woman stepped forward. She was beautiful, cute even. "You can call me Grandma Esme. This is my granddaughter, Mary. She found you and brought you here," said the elderly woman. "We thought of calling the police, but our village is far from town, and you needed help, so we did what we could." Matteo blinked. The last thing he remembered was speeding down the highway. "My car. What happened to my car last night? Where is it now?" he asked, still confused. "That was actually 2 days ago," Mary said softly, with an awkward smile. Matteo looked from one to the other. He had been unconscious for 2 days. Bandages covered his head and stomach, and scrapes lined other parts of his body. His whole body ached, but the painkillers they'd given him dulled the sting. They had wanted to report his accident to the authorities, but Matteo had asked them not to. He told them he had no memory, and feared he had been attacked. He worried that revealing himself would put him in more danger. That was a lie, of course. He simply didn't want to be found. He felt guilty. These 2 women had taken him in without hesitation. Their kindness was a lifeline he didn't deserve, and yet it was the only thing that kept him going. "Eat up," Mary said, carrying a tray of food into the room one morning. "Thanks," Matteo replied, offering her a small smile. She set the tray down and then placed some medical supplies beside it. "I'll change your bandages after you eat. Just let me know when you're ready." "I will," he said quietly and nodded. She gave him some privacy. Some time later, she returned and gently cleaned the wound on his abdomen. Matteo watched her closely as she worked, quietly admiring her cuteness and care. "Thanks," he murmured once she finished. "You're welcome," she said cheerfully. "If you feel well enough, join us downstairs for lunch." He smiled and nodded again. He could manage walking by now. The grandmother and granddaughter took good care of him. They only served healthy food, and the home had a peaceful, almost healing aura. When he came down the stairs, the first thing he saw was a wide vegetable garden just outside the living room. Rows of eggplants and other vegetables grew thick and healthy. He hadn't expected to see such vibrant greenery. "Come now, let's eat," Grandma Esme called, smiling warmly. The air was quiet and cool. Their lifestyle was simple and peaceful, completely different from the city he came from. "This is how we make a living, son," the grandmother said. "My granddaughter and I rely on this farm. She lost both her parents, so I raised her alone. This land is all I can leave to her." As she spoke, Matteo saw Mary carrying a clay jar of spring water into the house. Despite her age and the hardships of life, the older woman still wore an expression of calm contentment. She was clearly proud of what she had built. A month passed with Matteo staying in their home. Slowly, he learned the ways of farm life. Though born into wealth, he was adjusting to the humble routine. "You sure about this?" Grandma Esme asked, worried when he volunteered to accompany Mary to deliver the vegetables they had harvested. "I'm fine now. I can handle myself. Besides, she shouldn't go alone. It's too much for one person." he replied. The load was too heavy for Mary to carry by herself. Hiring help would cut into their already limited funds. "Thank you. I'm relieved to hear that," the old woman said, smiling at last. Mary soon joined them, wearing the small money pouch tied around her waist. "Let's go," she said brightly. He paused, momentarily caught off guard by her smile. Lately, she'd been looking more and more beautiful to him. They rode into town together with the sacks of vegetables loaded into a passenger truck. Matteo, shirtless and sweating, climbed on top to secure the bags. As he worked, he noticed Mary stealing a glance at him. When their eyes met, she quickly looked away, cheeks flushed. He couldn't help but smile, a teasing, playful grin. "Hey, your companion's cute. How come I've never seen him before?" one of the market vendors said with a wink. Mary smiled shyly. Matteo glanced at her, curious about how she'd react. "Hey, cutie, can I get your number?" squealed the vendor's teenage daughter from a nearby stall. Matteo gave them an awkward smile, unsure what to say. "Hey, that's Mary's husband," the woman in front of the stall said, scolding the girl. Mary's eyes went wide. "He's not my husband, ma'am," she stammered quickly. Matteo stayed silent, simply watching her panic. Oddly enough, he liked the idea of being her husband. "He's my cousin," Mary added. Matteo scowled as they walked home. Cousin? Really? He still hadn't gotten over what she had said earlier. "I couldn't just say I found you bloody in a wrecked car," she explained as they stood near the fish stall, waiting for their fish to be chopped. "If I did, people might talk, and someone might track you down. And I also didn't want them to think we're a couple. We're not married. There's nothing between us." That made sense, but it didn't stop him from feeling irritated. Why did her calling him her cousin annoy him so much? "Should I take the payment to your husband?" the fish vendor asked, pointing at Matteo. Mary bit her lip and turned away. "No, I've got it," she said, and paid quickly. "And he's not my husband, he's my cousin." Matteo sighed, disappointed once again. "Oh, I just thought you were a couple. You don't look alike," the vendor said with a laugh. "We're cousins, not twins," Mary replied, forcing a chuckle. The vendor nodded and kept laughing. Mary turned to him. "Let's go." She walked away briskly. Matteo followed her, still fuming about the cousin thing. When they returned home, Mary prepared lunch. Matteo could tell she was more tired than him. She always woke up early to help harvest and deliver vegetables. He started to worry for her. "I'll do that," he said, taking the knife from her. Startled, she looked at him. "I think I know how to cook this," he added as he began chopping ingredients. "You sure?" Mary asked, concern in her eyes. He smiled and nodded. "Yeah, I got this. Go rest." She hesitated, then left him alone in the kitchen. When he finished cooking, Mary returned with utensils. Just as she was about to place the glasses on the table, one slipped from her hand and shattered on the cement floor. She bent down to pick up the shards, and Matteo watched as her hand got cut. She didn't flinch, just kept cleaning. She was about to leave without treating the wound when Matteo grabbed her arm. "What?" she said, irritated. "Your hand's bleeding," he said, frowning. She swallowed and stayed silent, though it was clear he'd seen the injury. "Come here," he said, pulling her gently into the living room. He got some cotton and disinfectant. Mary let him help her, unsure what to expect. "Is this how you usually deal with injuries? Just ignore them?" he asked, frustration in his tone. "What if it gets infected?" She didn't respond. When he looked up, she was watching him quietly, as if listening to his every word. She didn't talk back. She just took it all in. Mary was different. She didn't react the way other women did. When scolded, she stayed silent, never lashing out. But Matteo had no idea what went on in her mind during those moments. She was strange, and for some reason, he was fascinated by her. "I just don't want you to neglect yourself," he muttered after a while. "I'm sorry." He finally calmed down. After a long silence, Mary said softly, "Thank you for caring." Her words startled him. He looked up at her and froze when she smiled. His eyes dropped to her lips. There was something pulling him in, an invisible force. He swallowed hard. His face drew closer, and before he realized it, their lips met. Mary froze while he closed his eyes, savoring the warmth of her mouth. His expert lips moved gently, then deeper. His hand rested against her back as the kiss lingered. The world felt like it stopped around them. When they finally pulled away, Mary still had her eyes closed. A moment later, she opened them slowly, then stood up and walked away in a daze. "Mary." Matteo reached out to hold her hand, but she moved away and quickly left the room. Later, Grandma Esme came in. "Time for dinner. What's going on? She just left. Didn't she like your cooking?" she teased. Matteo forced a small smile and pulled out a chair for the old woman. But deep down, worry was beginning to build inside him. He regretted what he did. Maybe he moved too fast. What if she misunderstood him? What if she left for good? "Dinner's ready, sweetheart," Grandma Esme called out from the kitchen. Mary's eyes lingered on Matteo. "I'm still full, Grandma. Go ahead without me." But her grandmother continued watching her closely. After a while, she sat beside Mary, observing her actions as she carefully planted vegetable seedlings into boxes. They sprouted them there first, before transferring the plants to the main garden. "Is something bothering you, sweetheart?" her grandmother asked gently. Mary paused, then forced a smile. "Why would anything be wrong? I don't have any debts to worry about, and our crops are doing well. There's nothing wrong at all, Grandma. You're just imagining things." Her grandmother pursed her lips. "Is that so?" She sat beside Mary and sighed, gazing out across the wide vegetable field. Then she spoke again, this time with more weight in her voice. "We've only known Matteo for a short time. At first, we weren't sure what to make of him, but over time he's become part of this family. And even if you haven't said anything, I can feel it, sweetheart." She reached for Mary's hand. "I can see it. I can feel it. You have feelings for Matteo." Mary froze. She hadn't expected her grandmother to figure it out so easily. Her head dropped, and she gave a bitter smile. "Wow, Grandma, you're still sharp. I surrender," she said with a weak chuckle, admitting the truth. Her grandmother's intuition had always been strong, too strong to deny. "I knew it. You're still so young, but I've been there. I went through all of that with your grandpa. Every little thing you're doing now, I've done before. That's why I know. It's easy to read your actions." Her grandmother gave her a proud, knowing smile. Mary laughed softly and looked back toward the garden. "Okay, fine. You guessed right. I admit it. I have feelings for Matteo." A mischievous grin appeared on her grandmother's face at the confession, but then Mary's expression turned serious. "But Grandma, did you see the kind of car he drove when he got here? Or the stuff he had with him when he had that accident? Everything looked expensive, and those credit cards in his wallet. I may not have gone to college, but I'm not stupid. Matteo clearly comes from a wealthy family." Her grandmother let out a deep sigh. "I can already guess what you're afraid of, sweetheart. You're worried you're not enough for him, that you two come from completely different worlds, that someone like him is meant to be with someone rich, not someone like us." Mary nodded. "Exactly. And someday, Matteo will return to that world. He'll go back to the life he had. He'll forget about us. That's why I think maybe I should stop this now." Her grandmother wrapped her in a hug. She understood completely. Later that afternoon, Mary told her grandmother she was heading to a birthday party in town. The celebration went late into the evening. She lost track of time enjoying the conversations with old friends. "A really handsome guy is asking for you, Mary," one of her former classmates announced as she entered. The party was packed with people, many of them classmates from her high school years. "Girl, he's even hotter than our high school crush," one of her friends squealed. Nervously, Mary made her way to the gate. Even from a distance, she recognized the tall, serious man standing there. Matteo. He stood at the gate, brows furrowed, clearly upset. "Gosh, I thought he was a celebrity," one of her classmates whispered. Even other guests were turning their heads to look at him. He had the kind of face and aura that drew attention, like a model or a foreigner who got lost in a small town. "We're going home," Matteo said coldly, his voice sharp. Mary's mouth fell open in shock. She didn't expect that tone from him, nor did she expect him to show up at all, much less looking angry. "Damn, even angry, he's hot," one of her classmates giggled beside her. Cousin, we're heading out," Matteo cut in, before she could say anything else. She had planned to introduce him to her friends, but he pulled her away before she could even explain. She stumbled along behind him until they reached the road. Then she yanked her hand from his grip. "What's your problem?" she snapped, clearly annoyed. Matteo clenched his jaw. "It's already 8:30. She frowned. "So? What time did you expect me to be home?" "I'm staying over at Mish's place," she said with irritation. His brows furrowed further. "Smells like alcohol," he said, after sniffing near her. "It was just one shot, mixed drinks, and I was with girls I've known forever," she countered. His whole demeanor turned darker. "Good thing I came to get you. It looks like you were about to throw your life away." "What?" she shot back. "I had one drink. One. It's not like I do this all the time. I know my limits." She hated how he was judging her. It felt unfair. When a tricycle passed by, she climbed in without saying another word. She didn't care if Matteo followed or not. They'd have to take 2 rides to get back to their area. When they reached the bus station, they learned that no more buses were heading to their village. It was too far, and no motorcycle drivers wanted to take the risk. "We have no choice. We'll have to stay at a lodge tonight," Matteo said. Then it hit her. They'd be spending the night in the same place, together. "I'm sorry, sir," the clerk at the lodge said. "There's only one room left. It's Valentine's Day, so everything's full." That's when Mary realized the situation. She didn't say anything else and let Matteo handle the booking. Inside the room, she quickly grabbed a blanket and pillow from the bed, but Matteo gently took them from her. "I'll sleep on the floor. You take the bed," he said. She hesitated, but eventually walked toward the bed. Matteo laid his blanket out on the floor and then left the room. When he returned, he carried several plastic bags. "Shampoo, soap, and clothes. There's a store still open nearby," he said, placing a bag on the table. Then he handed her another. "Food. Eat if you get hungry." She opened the bag and blushed when she saw a pair of underwear inside. Matteo had thought of everything. He showered first, and when he emerged, freshly bathed, Mary couldn't stop herself from biting her lip. Something stirred inside her. Flustered, she rushed into the bathroom, but in her hurry, she forgot to bring clothes. She stepped out wrapped only in a towel. She breathed a sigh of relief when she saw Matteo lying down with his eyes closed. Then she realized, with horror, that her clothes were in a bag near his head. She didn't want to walk over in case her towel slipped, so she crawled. Quietly, she reached for the bag, inch by inch. Then, as if fate had conspired against her, the towel came loose. Her eyes widened in panic, just as Matteo opened his. Their eyes locked. Then, in her panic, she stumbled and fell, straight onto him. Her lips accidentally brushed against his. Mateo's lips moved instinctively, deepening the kiss. His arms wrapped around her. She didn't fight it. She gave in. He began to pull the towel away. Mary didn't stop him. No matter how much she tried to deny it, her heart wanted this too. Even though they were exhausted that night, Mateo and Mary made sure to leave early the next morning. They wanted her grandmother to think they had come home the night before, even if the truth was that they spent the night at the lodge. They were even more careful, because they didn't want her grandmother to suspect what had really happened between them. There was a subtle tension between Mateo and Mary after that, an awareness in their glances. They wanted to be affectionate, but they also wanted to respect Grandma Esme, who still had no idea about the real status of their relationship. For Mateo, their relationship was official now, but for Mary, it wasn't. Not yet. She needed her grandmother's blessing first. She respected her too much to move forward without it. They were in the middle of a quiet and pleasant lunch when they suddenly heard a car pull up outside the house. Mateo stood first and headed out to see who it was. He froze when he saw the familiar vehicle outside. His father stepped out and stormed toward him, rage written all over his face. Without warning, Mateo was punched hard in the face. "Benedict!" his mother screamed as she got out of the car. "You humiliated me!" His father bellowed, barely held back by the men who had accompanied him. Mateo stood still, staring at the ground. It was clear. The truth was about to come out, and he wasn't ready, but it was too late. "What are you doing? Why are you hurting Mateo?" Grandma Esme came out, her voice trembling with fury. She had seen the entire thing. "Are you the one helping my son hide? Do you realize I can press charges against you for this?" Mateo's father shouted, pointing his finger in her face. "Dad!" Mateo growled, stepping in. In the months he had stayed there, Grandma Esme had become like family to him. He couldn't accept the way his father was speaking to her. He owed her his life. No one, especially not his own father, had the right to disrespect her. His father looked stunned. "Let's go," Mateo said coldly. "I'll go with you quietly, but don't cause any more trouble here." He turned back to the grandmother and granddaughter. "Thank you for everything," he said, voice heavy. He looked at Mary. A bitter smile touched his lips, and he nodded at her. "I'm leaving now." He had no choice. He didn't want his father causing any more chaos in the peaceful lives of these good people. They didn't deserve this kind of treatment. He got in the car without looking back. His parents followed. "We'll talk when we get home. You have a lot of explaining to do," his father said, his voice sharp as he shut the car door. Mateo didn't respond. Instead, he stared into the side mirror. He could still see the grandmother and granddaughter standing outside. Their figures became smaller and smaller as the car drove away. Even the tiny house behind them slowly disappeared from his view. He refused to believe it was the last time he'd see them. He would come back. He had to. "I'll marry Claudia," Mateo said, "but give me my freedom after that. I don't want you controlling even this last part of my life." He dropped his bank cards onto the table. They had all been cut off, made unusable by his father. The engagement hadn't happened the first time because Mateo had gone missing. Now that his parents had found him again, the engagement with Claudia was back on. His father agreed. He'd do anything to make Mateo follow through. The cards were reinstated, and Mateo once again had full access to everything. That evening, Claudia and her family came over to Mateo's house to discuss the engagement party. "Do you know how worried I was when you disappeared?" Claudia said sweetly. "I was with your parents, looking for you. I was so scared." She placed a hand on his chest. Mateo clenched his jaw. There was no love in his heart for her anymore, only hatred and bitterness. "I hope you won't disappear again before our wedding. You know, no matter where you go, you always come back to me." We're meant to be, Matteo. Just accept it. She giggled. A mocking grin curled at his lips. How do you even have the nerve to face me like this, Claudia? He asked. Did you forget how you cheated on me? Claudia smiled faintly. Still haven't moved on, have you? She leaned in. You're still hurting, aren't you? Don't worry, babe. I won't do it again, she said with a wink. I'm going to be a good girl now. I'm all yours. She leaned in to kiss him, but Matteo turned his face away. You're so full of yourself, he muttered. Don't worry, I've moved on. I've already found someone far more deserving of my love. Someone who's nothing like you. In short, she's better than you. Claudia's jaw tightened. Liar! You're such a liar, Matteo. You're just saying that to get under my skin. She laughed bitterly, but her face faltered when she realized he wasn't joking. Even if I marry you now, Matteo continued, you'll never replace her. She'll always be the one in my heart. He gave a cold smile. Let's play your little game, Claudia. I'll use you, just like our families want. That's all this ever was, anyway. He turned his back on her and left her standing there, near tears. He poured himself a drink and glanced back at their families, laughing, celebrating the engagement. Matteo's mind was already elsewhere. He had a plan. He began preparing in secret, getting Mary a passport and filing the paperwork for a property purchase without his parents noticing. He withdrew a large sum of money from his account at the last possible moment, so they wouldn't catch on right away. When everything was ready, he disappeared again, this time for good. He was going back for her. Meanwhile, Mary was throwing up into a sink in the bathroom. She wiped her face and slowly stepped outside, her body weak. Her grandmother immediately approached her, concerned. Drink this ginger tea, sweetheart. It'll help settle your stomach, Grandma Esme said gently, handing her the warm cup. Mary gave a faint smile. Days after Matteo had left, she finally confessed to her grandmother what had happened between them. She admitted she was pregnant, and that Matteo was the father. Her grandmother's face fell. She had hoped Matteo would stay, that he would have said something about their future. Now that Mary was carrying his child, she was certain she was going to raise this baby on her own. Mary tried her best to do as her grandmother asked, to take care of herself and remain calm. But she could no longer do the things she used to. She couldn't help out on the farm anymore, and she worried constantly about her grandmother. The older woman was too old to be doing everything alone. I'm sorry, Grandma, Mary said tearfully after another round of nausea. Her grandmother shook her head. You love him. You're only human. Don't blame yourself. And if you're really meant to be, he'll come back. If not, I'm still here. I won't leave you. We'll raise this baby together, you and me. Don't worry. I've got you. Mary hugged her tightly. At moments like this, especially when emotions overwhelmed her, her grandmother was always there to comfort her. Just being in her arms made her feel lighter. A few moments later, they heard the sound of a car horn outside. Both turned toward the door, eyes wide. They rushed outside. Parked out front was a sleek black car, and stepping out was the man Mary's heart had longed for all this time. Her grandmother grabbed her hand. See, sweetheart, I told you, if you're really meant to be, he'll come back. A soft smile broke across Mary's lips. Her eyes never left Matteo as he walked toward them. She hadn't expected him to return. She had been so angry, so hurt when he left. But now, all of that disappeared. All she felt was joy and nervousness. I'm happy Matteo came back for you, her grandmother said. Now I have nothing left to worry about. I want to stay with you both, but it's time. Mary turned to her. What do you mean, Grandma? You and Matteo need to live your lives together. Just the two of you. I'm old. I want peace. Go now, the two of you. Take care of each other. Don't ever neglect yourselves. Those were the last words Grandma Esme said after Matteo revealed his plan. He wanted her to come with them abroad, but she refused. She didn't want to leave the land where she'd spent her whole life. She insisted on staying, entrusting Mary's future to him. Mary agreed to leave with Matteo. It was painful, but she realized her grandmother was right. It was time to face life as just the two of them. During the ride, Matteo held her hand gently, flashing her a reassuring smile. "Don't worry, everything's going to be okay, baby," he said, kissing the back of her hand. Only then did she feel her nerves ease. "When we get there," he continued, "we'll go to my uncle on my mum's side. He's always been against how my dad handled things, and he's wanted to take me in for years. We'll finally go to him." A soft smile touched Matteo's lips as he spoke. At least now they had someone to lean on once they arrived in that unfamiliar country. Mary finally understood why Matteo had left the way he did. Everything had been part of a plan. He just needed time to come back and make it all right. "I have something to tell you, Matteo," Mary said nervously. "Huh? What is it?" Matteo asked, still focused on the road ahead. She took a deep breath, gathering her courage. "I'm pregnant." Matteo immediately slammed the brakes. Thankfully, they were wearing seatbelts, so Mary wasn't thrown forward. "I'm sorry, I'm really sorry," she said quickly. Matteo turned to her, alarmed. "Did I hear that right? You're pregnant?" A smile broke on Mary's face, and she nodded. "Yes, I'm pregnant." Joy lit up Matteo's expression. He reached over and hugged her tightly, the embrace filled with warmth and relief. Mary couldn't help but smile. A moment later, Matteo reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, glittering box. Inside were 2 rings, one of them gleaming with diamonds. "It's an heirloom ring. I want you to be the one who wears it, not anyone else." "I want you to be my wife," he said emotionally, staring into her eyes. He slipped the ring onto her finger, then placed the other ring on his own hand. Mary teared up and hugged him again. Matteo couldn't stop smiling as they continued driving. Mary began to feel nauseous from her pregnancy during the ride, but it eased after a while. Matteo kept driving calmly, but the peaceful road trip was suddenly interrupted when a speeding car came hurtling toward them. The vehicle was fast, too fast. It seemed completely out of control. All they saw before the impact was the blinding glare of headlights. Matteo instinctively reached for Mary's hand. Then everything went black as their car was struck and flung off the road. The crash was swift, violent. Darkness followed. Matteo's eyelids fluttered open, heavy. He could hear voices around him, but sleep pulled him back under. When he woke again, the first face he saw was his mother's. She was teary-eyed and immediately called for a doctor. "My son is awake. Somebody please, he's awake." She rushed out of the room to alert the staff. Matteo had to stay in the hospital for 2 months. His recovery was slow and painful. "Mary, where is she?" he kept asking, but no one gave him answers. His mother avoided the topic. A month passed, then his father arrived, still furious, but chose to say nothing, just a piercing glare. "Where's Mary?" Matteo asked his mother again. "She's pregnant. She's carrying our child." Days passed. Still no news. He couldn't stand it anymore. How could he just sit there while Mary was missing? "The woman you were with is still missing. Don't ever mention that worthless girl's name again," his father snapped. Before his father could finish, Matteo ripped the IV from his arm. His mother screamed in panic as blood trickled from the tube. "I have to find Mary. She needs me," he shouted, but his father's men quickly restrained him before he could get far. "You won't search for her," his father growled, "because if you do, I swear, I'll kill her grandmother. Mark my words, Matteo." Matteo lunged at his father in rage, determined to hurt him, But the nurses sedated him before he could act. He blacked out, and as the world faded again, one fear remained. Would he ever find Mary again? Would he ever meet his unborn child? He felt trapped, powerless, like he had placed the woman he loved in danger. 11 years passed. Outside, waves crashed against the shore. It was hot, even near the ocean. On the other side of a thin metal wall, neighbors argued loudly. The walls were flimsy, just sheets of corrugated tin. Noise was constant, but everyone who lived there had gotten used to it. "Mom! Mom!" Mary opened her eyes at the sound of a child's voice. Her son stood beside her, smiling. "I already ate, Mom. I finished the food we had last night. There's still a little left. You should eat too." "Are you heading out already, Bobby?" she asked in a gentle tone. He nodded. Bobby was her son. She had gone through a cesarean delivery. When she woke up from a coma, she remembered nothing. But the voice that echoed in her dreams, calling her Mary, stuck with her, so she kept the name. "Please eat something, Mom. Don't do the laundry unless you've had food. Don't forget to take care of yourself, okay?" Bobby pleaded sweetly. She smiled, nodded, and watched as he grabbed a sack and stepped outside. Bobby was only 10 years old, but because of their situation, he had been forced to work to help her. Every day she blamed herself. If only she hadn't gotten sick. Maybe her son would have had a better life. She couldn't afford to send him to school. Their poverty had robbed Bobby of a real childhood. Tears welled in her eyes. She turned toward the window. They lived in a makeshift home near the coastline, part of a crowded shanty town. No one knew where they came from. Not even she knew how she'd ended up in this life. Her past was blank. All she wanted was to live quietly with her son, safe and far from the world that had hurt them. "Mom, look what I found!" Bobby called out joyfully, returning home with a plastic bag. The bag was torn. It looked like a stray dog had tried to dig through it before he picked it up. "See, Mom? It's still good. Probably leftovers from a nearby restaurant. They threw it away, but I found it." She wasn't surprised anymore. Bobby often claimed he found food like this, but she knew the truth. He dug through trash just to bring something home for them to eat. Her laundry income barely covered their rent, water, and electricity. Most of what was left went to buying rice. Meat and vegetables were luxuries they couldn't afford. "Give it to me. I'll fry it again," she said gently, taking the bag. "You can't eat it like that." Thankfully, they still had some leftover cooking oil. As she cooked, she wiped away tears. She wished it had been freshly bought. Real food, not leftovers. Someday maybe they'd be able to buy good food too. Someday she hoped she could feed her son a proper meal. "Let's eat, Mom, but let's pray first," Bobby said, smiling. Mary nodded and closed her eyes as her son began to pray. Despite the hunger, despite their situation, Bobby remained kind-hearted and humble. She was deeply grateful for that. The next day, their landlady came by to collect rent. "I'm raising your rent starting next month," she announced. "Wait, didn't you just raise it a few months ago?" Mary replied, startled. "You're welcome to find another place if you don't like it. You're always late on payments and now you're complaining too?" The woman snapped. The rent had gone from $200 to $250 to $300. Now the landlady wanted to raise it again, despite the poor condition of their shack. The door was falling apart. Mary and Bobby had fixed it themselves. The walls were so thin, one kick could break through. But Mary had no choice. She agreed. They had nowhere else to go. Moving would require a deposit and advance rent. They could barely afford the rent now. How could they save for anything else? When Bobby got home, he asked, "Are you okay, Mom?" "I'm fine. Did you eat?" She checked the pot. There was rice, but no side dish. She had forgotten to find something to cook. "I'll go borrow a can of sardines," she told him. "No, Mom. Bobby said quickly. He walked into the kitchen, grabbed some sugar, and sprinkled it over his rice. "This tastes great, Mom. Come eat with me." He mixed vinegar and dried fish together, creating his own version of a meal. Mary watched him with a bittersweet smile. Later that afternoon, Mary went to the local market. Vendors shouted to attract customers from every direction. She moved slowly, looking for discounted vegetables, damaged ones she could buy cheaply. "Can I get all of this? How much?" she asked a vendor who already recognized her. "You always pick out the scraps. Just take those. They're yours," the woman said kindly. Because Mary often bought throwaway goods, some of the vendors had started giving them to her for free. Mary smiled and placed the vegetables into her reusable bag. She also bought 2 cans of sardines to cook with them. On her way home, she accidentally kicked a newspaper on the ground. She reached down to pick it up and froze. There was a man's face printed on it. He looked familiar. She read the name. Mateo Hernando. Mary. The voice rang in her head. The scene flashed in her mind. A sharp pain shot through her skull. She grabbed her head and moved to the side of the road to steady herself. She breathed deeply, trying to ease the throbbing. She was trembling now, crouched by the sidewalk. Panicked, she threw the newspaper away and walked home as fast as she could. But as she reached her house, the man's face returned in her mind. Why? Why did just seeing that photo stir something inside her? The next day, Bobby brought Mary to the pawn shop. They had no choice. Mary had been sick lately, and she needed medicine, but they didn't have the money for it. "Mum, don't worry, I'll take care of everything," Bobby said as he tightly gripped her hand. The woman behind the counter smiled kindly. "What do you need, kiddo?" "I'd like to pawn this ring," Bobby said, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket and placing it on the glass counter. The woman's eyes widened as she opened the box. Inside was a diamond ring, elegant, sparkling, and clearly worth a fortune. "Where did you get this?" the pawnshop owner asked, looking both shocked and concerned. "It's my mom's. She's sick and we need to buy medicine. Please just take it. I don't want her to suffer anymore," Bobby pleaded. The woman glanced at Mary, who was seated nearby with her head bowed, breathing shallowly. The pawnshop owner hesitated. "You know, we don't usually allow kids to pawn items." "Please," Bobby begged, "we really need the money." Moved by the child's desperation, she finally nodded. "All right, I'll give you 30,000 for it." Bobby's face lit up. "Thank you so much." She began filling out the paperwork. That same day, Mateo happened to be passing through the area when his car was forced to stop because of heavy traffic. His driver tried to maneuver through the crowded street. Frustrated, Mateo looked out the window and froze. He had just glanced toward a pawn shop and saw something in the display that made his blood run cold. "Stop the car!" he ordered suddenly. His driver pulled over immediately. Mateo got out and walked straight to the shop window. There, under the harsh fluorescent lighting, sat a diamond ring. His eyes narrowed. He knew that ring. It was the heirloom he had given to Mary. Without thinking, he entered the pawn shop. "Good afternoon, sir. What can I do for you?" The woman greeted him. Mateo walked up to the counter. "That ring in the display. I want it." The woman hesitated. "It just came in today." "I'll pay whatever price you want. I need to know who pawned it." The woman blinked. "It was a child, sir. Just 10 years old. He said it was his mother's. She's sick." Mateo's pulse quickened. His hands trembled. "I need their address." I shouldn't give that out." "I'll pay you triple what you gave the boy," Mateo interrupted. "Just give me the address." The woman hesitated for a moment, then finally wrote it down and handed it to him. Mateo snatched the paper and ran out the door. Back in the car, he stared at the address. Then he looked again at the ring in his hand. She was alive, and she had kept the ring all these years. Mary stirred in bed, coughing weakly. Her fever had gotten worse. Sweat clung to her skin as she turned her head to the side. Bobby sat nearby, wiping her forehead gently with a damp cloth. "Mum, hang in there, please," he whispered, trying not to cry. There was a knock at the door. Bobby stood and walked over, confused. They rarely had visitors. He opened the door slowly. A man stood outside. Tall, dignified, wearing an expensive coat. He looked out of place in their run-down alley. In his hand was a small piece of paper. His eyes were scanning the numbers on each door until they met Bobby's gaze. Bobby opened the door wider. "Yes?" he asked. "Is this where you live?" the man asked. Bobby nodded cautiously. The man stared for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then he knelt. "I'm looking for a woman," he said softly. "Her name is Mary. She has a child, a boy, about your age." Bobby blinked, unsure what to say. The man reached into his pocket and pulled out the ring. "Does this belong to her?" Bobby's eyes widened. You're the man in the photo," he said, voice trembling. "You're the one my mum said she saw, the one she dreamed about." At that moment, Mary groaned from inside. Her cough echoed faintly through the paper-thin walls. Mateo's head snapped up. "Mum's sick," Bobby said. Without waiting, Mateo stood and rushed inside. He saw her on the mattress, pale, frail, and struggling to breathe. "Mary," he said, kneeling beside her. His voice cracked. Mary opened her eyes slowly. Her vision was blurred, but she saw a face she had dreamed about so many times. "Mateo?" she whispered, confused. Then it all came rushing back, the memories. He nodded, tears falling freely. "I'm here. I found you. I'm sorry it took so long." Mary tried to sit up, but he gently stopped her. "Don't move, just rest. I'm taking you to the hospital. Everything will be okay now." She stared at him, overwhelmed. It felt like a dream. "I thought I lost you," she whispered. "I never stopped looking," he said. He turned to Bobby and smiled through his tears. "You're my son," he said softly. Bobby looked at him, stunned. Mateo opened his arms. Bobby hesitated, then ran into them. That night, Mary was taken to the hospital. Mateo paid for the best doctors, the best care. Bobby stayed by her side the entire time, holding her hand. It was the beginning of something new, something long delayed, but finally within reach. Mateo stayed at the hospital the entire night. He never left Mary's side, holding her hand as if afraid she'd slip away again. By morning, her fever had broken. Her breathing grew steadier. The doctor came in with a smile. "She's going to be okay. You brought her in just in time." Mateo exhaled deeply, relief flooding his face. He leaned over and kissed Mary's forehead. "Thank you," he whispered. Mary opened her eyes. "I'm really alive, aren't I?" she asked softly. He chuckled through a tearful smile. "Yes, you are, and I'm never letting you go again." Meanwhile, Bobby was sitting outside the hospital room when a tall man in a suit arrived with several police officers. They approached quietly. "Are you Mateo Henderson's son?" the man asked. Bobby stood, startled. "Yes, sir." "You're brave, kid. That ring you pawned helped us track your mum, and now we can finally open a case against Mateo's father." Bobby's eyes widened. "What?" "He committed multiple crimes, including obstruction of justice and issuing death threats. We've been after him for years. Your mother's disappearance was reported, but buried. Someone with power made sure it never reached the authorities." The officer stepped forward. "We've already arrested 2 of his men. One confessed that Mateo's father threatened to kill your great-grandmother if your dad ever went looking for your mom again." Bobby was stunned silent. Inside the hospital room, Matteo gently helped Mary sit up when the officers came in. "You're safe now," one of them told her, "and the man who tried to keep you hidden will face justice." Mary looked at Matteo, unsure what to feel. "He won't hurt you ever again," Matteo assured her. "Or Bobby, or your grandma. I promise." Later that week, they visited Grandma Esme. She was sitting on the front porch, slowly sipping tea. When she saw them, her eyes filled with tears. "I knew you'd come back to her," she said to Matteo with a smile. He bowed his head and embraced her tightly. "I owe you everything," he said. "You gave me a life I never deserved." She laughed softly. "You earned it. You chose love. You didn't let bitterness win." The sun shone brightly overhead as they sat down together, finally whole, finally home. The end.